on this level of the individual experience, this is where I think I see two kind of opposing camps, let's say, of what is the most important thing to bring into a jam. And you can take this already, this is something that I think that will go much beyond the context of contact improvisation. But on one camp, there are those who are advocating for self-responsibility around boundaries, that everyone should communicate and take responsibilities, full responsibility on what they feel okay with. And if they feel that something is kind of getting close into their own individual boundary, they should be able to clearly communicate it to their partner or to the group or to whoever they work with and say, I don't want this, enough, let's stop. And I would say that, of course, there is some truth in that. That's very important to be able to do that. And if you can do it, well, you probably have a very good starting point in preventing boundary crossing around your boundary crossing from your perspective. And the other camp is the camp who advocates that everyone should be sensitive to notice other people's boundaries. So we don't need to be so much alert, and we don't need to be so worried about people crossing our boundaries, because everybody is so sensitive and everybody is really trying their best to really listen and see what are the boundaries of the other practitioners, so that it's very clear, okay, that's kind of my focus. And interesting enough, of course, some people will stay in the middle. I'm a practitioner like this. I see truth in both sides, and I think that both of these things are very important. But for me, this kind of division already has some kind of interesting starting point for some kind of investigation on the level of the individual experience. And I think that when I think about those differences, what comes in my mind is trait agreeableness, which is part of the Big Five module in psychology. And agreeableness is the ability to is a personality trait that measures the degree of how much you are willing to cooperate with others versus how much you can compete with others. That's one way to understand agreeableness. Another way to understand agreeableness is how much empathy do you have versus how much you have the ability to sense your own needs. And on one end of the spectrum, you would have a person who is extremely disagreeable, and a person who is extremely disagreeable would have very intuitive connection to their own needs. So whenever something doesn't suit that kind of a person, they immediately sense it. And they not only sense it, they have no problem in communicating it, because they don't mind entering into a conflict. They don't mind being in a situation where they have to make somebody else that they wouldn't mind that someone else wouldn't feel comfortable, because the importance is on what do I need right now. And that's, of course, has kind of positive utilities, but also have, let's say, kind of the negative aspect of that kind of being on that extreme level. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have a person who is extremely agreeable, and a person like that would have a really, first, so if you're very agreeable, you're a very empathetic person, which means that you have real good ability to feel people around you. And when you feel people, naturally, you want to pay attention to how to what happened. You don't want to hurt anybody. And you have really good ability to then sense what the people around you need in order to feel comfortable, which is kind of the opposite of being disagreeable. One feels oneself, one feels others. And again, both of those end of those spectrums have really practical utility and importance in the world. So it's not that one is good and one is bad. And it's not that being in the middle is necessarily the best thing. again, if you're extremely disagreeable, you have really good chance to move forward your ideas, to take your space in the world, and to initiate things. Again, you don't mind, experiencing conflict. You don't mind disagreement. On the other hand, if you're an extremely agreeable person, you would be really good with communication, with collaboration, with understanding other people. For example, I don't know, just an example that comes on my mind. If you work as a teacher or as a kindergarten teacher, being agreeable is very good. The ability to sense what other people need and to be very empathic versus all the time thinking about yourself. So yeah, both of these things are very important, but they are kind of standing in opposition. And me personally, I'm a very disagreeable person, and my wife is an extremely agreeable person, and we both did this kind of personality test. I got 1 out of 100, which means that I'm really on one side of the spectrum. So if you take 100 people, there will be only one person who will be less agreeable than me. And my wife got 96. So again, she's like on the edge of being agreeable. So we always have conflict around that. And exactly those two qualities that I've said before around boundaries, this is what we experience all the time. I ask my wife, hey, if you need something, why can't you clearly express it? And I will be more than willing to help you do whatever you need to. And my wife would always say to me, why can't you be more sensitive to notice what I need right now? Why does it always have to come from me? And again, for her, it's much easier if I can sense her boundary, because then she doesn't need to come into conflict and tell me, hey, Matan, do you mind now stop doing what you're doing and help me? Because that's already entering into a conflict for her. So that demands a lot of effort from her side to communicate. From my side, in order to sense her, I need to really change something fundamental about the nature of my attention. So then I need to be in a lot of effort in order to sense, wow, there's another person who needs something right now, and not to be focused on what do I need. And of course, I'm very happy that we are living together, because we can learn from one another, and we are always, I've really shifted, even though I'm still, that's kind of my starting point, I really learned how to behave differently. Same for my wife. So again, our automatic program is still the same, but we've learned and we developed strategies of how to behave differently. Now, if I bring it back into the contact jam, so it's very obvious that each camp really wants to pursue what they feel comfortable with. So if you're kind of on the disagreeable side, you don't want to bother while you're dancing about sensing boundaries. You want to dance, you want to, have fun, and you want to trust that your partner will just tell you, hey, man, that's enough for me. And then you're like, of course you would respect the boundary. It's not that you have a wish to cross anyone's boundary, but it demands so much effort to read very subtle body language and facial expression and kind of energetical connection that you would feel much comfortable if you know that the person that you're dancing can just say it very easily. Hey, please let's slow down, or hey, do you mind not to lift me so much, or whatever. Or even say, hey, I had enough of the dance today. And I think that every very disagreeable person will be very happy with that kind of strategy. And on the other hand, the very agreeable people that are coming to jams would have the opposite wish, that okay, instead of all of us that needs to kind of make an effort and confront this kind of internal challenge, and that's something that I think many disagreeable people just don't understand, how much energy and effort an agreeable person needs in order to communicate something that might be in opposition to the person that they are sharing time and space. So for example, if you don't want to be lifted, but your partner always lifts you, an agreeable person doesn't start with feeling themselves. They start with like, hey, what can I do in order that my partner will feel nice in this dance? What can I do in order to make my partner feel comfortable right now? And only after quite some time, maybe the realization of, hey, what's going on with me would come. Maybe it would not even come while the dance is happening. Maybe it will just come later, after the dance is already over. And then the realization will be like, something was not so good there. I didn't feel comfortable, or yeah, I was always just trying to satisfy my partner's need. I didn't sense myself at all. And this kind of easy solution that I hear, like, hey, just take responsibility and say what you need. That's not really an attempt to solve the problem. Just this is for me just an attempt to frame the problem through a very specific lens. But the problem is not that everybody should be able to express their boundaries. That's maybe, again, that's kind of a utopia, but we will never be in such a space. The problem is the gap between people who have really clear ability to sense other people's boundary, but they cannot communicate their own, and people who have very clear ability to sense their own boundary, but not others. And then there is a problem when they meet. And then, sometimes I've heard of, like two people finishing a dance. And that could be, again, like you can throw the word dance and put it in any other context that you want to, but, that one person comes out of the experience with a kind of a total bliss and, wow, that was such a nice connection. And for the other person, it was like, wow, there was completely no listening. And I didn't know how to come out of that dance. And that's a problem that happens, again, on this individual internal quadrant. If you want to see more precious and insightful moments, make sure to check our short clips playlist. To see longer interviews, check out the full episode playlist just below it. And to be notified for all future videos, click the subscribe button and don't forget to hit the notification bell. See you on the next episode.